we've made it to another Friday. I have brought nothing but doom and gloom for you guys for the next 2 hours, but most of you should expect nothing less. If you're newer to the program, I think you're probably going to catch on to that pretty quickly. I'm looking forward to jumping into it with you here. This has definitely been a very fun 2 weeks for me as this adventure with a new media company has kind of been growing, and I definitely love the new interaction that I'm getting with people in YouTube comments and emails and in things of that nature. Some of you may have realized that you're starting to see me in your reflection when you're looking in the mirror. And I apologize. I should have told this to you when you started watching the show. That's not in your head. That's an actual thing that I do. You can get it to stop. All you have to do is tell 5 people close to you about this show. As soon as you do that, it subsides until a future date. The people in the Fox Valley have learned that, unfortunately. They've been entered into this. It's kind of like The Ring. So please go out of your way to let a couple people know about this show who maybe don't know about it otherwise. I have no marketing budget, so I've engaged in black magic to make sure that it happens. If you don't do anything for 7 days, I come through the mirror. It's not violent or anything like that, but then you got to listen to me talk about more political stuff in your house. So go tell 5 friends of yours about this show before Sunday, please. We got a lot that I want to jump into here, and I posted on my socials where I want to start today. And I'll tell you, if you listen to yesterday's show, now that I've broken the dam about blocking people, specifically MAGAs that don't want to engage in good faith, now that the dam's open, I'm relentless at this point. I posted a chart up on my socials, which will be there in perpetuity: TikTok, Facebook. It's on the gram. It's on Twitter. Anywhere you want to go check it out. It's more BLS data, which is always good. It's always good to find this kind of data, especially during the presidency, if they're telling you something that isn't rosy. Because as I've stated, you never, personally, like I'm not going to tell you guys what to do. I never trust whitehouse.gov. Some of you know to not trust it right now, but were fine when Biden would share it. Some of you knew what Biden was sharing was horse crap, but you're thrilled now that it finally has been fixed and the government is telling the truth again. And it's only when the government data isn't painting a rosy picture that I find that it is relevant, because it's important to have these conversations in a realistic way. And that's why someone ended up getting blocked today. And I'll explain more about that as I kind of describe to you guys what we're dealing with here today. BLS data has a new chart out there that shows grocery prices that haven't come down since peak inflation. And it shows the increase in the price of these goods from January of 2020 up until today. And for some semblance of understanding here, the categories include fresh fruits and vegetables, milk, rice, pasta, and cornmeal, bread, chicken, the glorious eggs, coffee, and beef and veal. That's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different categories. And it shows, beyond a shadow of a doubt, prices remain stagnant in 2020 and in 2021, and in all 8 categories, shot through the roof in 2022. 2022 is also when inflation peaked and began to subside. Now, if you're not familiar with this program, I believe that inflation is no longer a relevant metric to the price of goods, because inflation can tell you one thing, but with such a small number of companies controlling so many different industries, you shouldn't be surprised that regardless of what the inflation data says, the prices go up. That's where my frustration with the Fed stems from. When MAGA has problems with the Fed, it is from a different perspective than when I have problems with the Fed. And we can get into that another time if interested, but I don't believe the interest rates, A, had to be risen at all, and B, that they did not have to be kept up high for as long as they were. And it was explicitly done in an effort to usurp worker power that had been aggregating since COVID, with people seeing wage increases and a capacity to dictate how work was going to work. And the establishment, whether it's Democrat or Republican, was like, oh, son of a gun, we better make sure that the plebeians understand who's in charge here. Let's jack up the interest rates so we can get the unemployment number where we need it to be, so people are willing to work for poverty wages again. But more on that another time. These numbers shot up in 2022 under Joe Biden, and from 2022 until the end of his term didn't move. At least in most cases. Eggs actually shot through the roof in 2023 before coming back down to that 2022 level and then shooting through the roof again in 2025 before coming back down to that 2022 level. But it never saw 2020 numbers, and clearly, based on the way the chart looks, available on my socials, it's not going to go below that number again. All of the other ones, fresh fruits and vegetables, milk, rice, pasta, cornmeal, bread, and chicken, that's 5 of the 8, all have flatlined from 2022 until today. Now, you may notice that from 2022 until today, both Joe Biden and Donald Trump have been president. Now, I've been leaving coffee and then beef and veal, which is its own category, it's paired together, off of this list. That's because it peaked in 2022 for a while, flatlined during the Biden years and the first year of the Trump administration, and now coffee has reached a 50% higher level than what it was pre-inflation, and beef and veal is at 59% of what it was pre-inflation, going up even higher, almost doubling from the end of the Biden term based on the decisions that the Trump administration has been making. So allow me to put this in another clearer way to understand what's going on. Beef and veal is up 59%. Coffee's up 50%. Eggs are still up 36%. Chicken's up 33%. Bread's up 33%. And so on, and so on, and so on. They're not even luxury items. These are just basic items that people go to the grocery store to buy. When Biden was in office and the line was Bidenomics was working, these were the prices that people were paying. Wages were not up 33%. And so when you were getting gaslit into thinking that the economy was working, it was very easy to get frustrated, unless, of course, you were a part of Blue MAGA and wanted to pretend that that wasn't happening. The data is unavoidable. This is not my spin. This is not my take. I'm just telling you the stuff that happened and the numbers behind it at this point. Where I get frustrated, though, is you now see J.D. Vance trying to tout what's going on in the world of inflation, pretending prices are coming down, even though there is empirically no data to back that claim up. And in fact, there are a handful of categories where the prices have gone up. The only category that has gone down is eggs, and eggs came down from 128% more expensive down to 36% more expensive. So it's not like it went to those old numbers. It went to the artificially inflated numbers of old, of that in-between period between 2023 and 2025, when they decided that since only 3 companies control about 70% of the market, they can dictate what the prices are. And by the way, you can go back to 2023 on my show. I interviewed people in the farming industry with Farm Action about those price increases and how consolidation impacted those price increases. But so to see J.D. Vance come here and try and tout some kind of reduction in prices, the data is the data. It's not happening. And where my frustration stems from and why I have taken to blocking people now is I posted this chart on my Facebook. And Facebook is where, a lot of the boomers congregate. I love a lot of you guys. I have a solid Facebook following, which I absolutely love. There's a handful of people, in the MAGA brigade that get upset because they can tell I'm talking facts to people that maybe don't necessarily agree with me, but I'm not going to let Donald Trump's garbage kind of sneak through the woodwork either. One guy hops on the page to say orange juice just dropped 50% at the local grocery store for the store brand, to which I said, okay, cool. Then disregard all of the data to the contrary of that and just keep defending your president. Thank you for contributing. He then goes on to say we are still 110% better than we were doing in the Biden era. Thank God Kamala didn't get to seal our doom. I'm sure, blah, 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 blah. Keep dreaming of a utopian and lawless society that you so desperately want. And you realize then when somebody is no longer reachable, because he's looking at the data that says objectively nothing is getting better. I am not presenting this in a way saying that Harris would have brought prices down. She wouldn't have. I am not saying this from a perspective that Joe Biden did something to quell price increases. He didn't. I am doing this to break through the tribalism and highlight for people that prices went up in 2022 and have not moved, despite the fact that profits have come down. Meaning, these corporations used COVID as a reason to bring the prices up, and some of those industries are now using Trump's tariffs to do the same things again. And so you see all of these price increases between 33 and 128% across all these different food items, and wages absolutely did not go up at that same clip. They didn't even kind of go up at that same clip. And so that is the affordability crisis in one chart. The cost of everything is above roughly 30% once everything evens out. Your wages are not up 30%. And you have two political parties, the Democrats, who now are going to try and convince you that Trump's tariffs are why costs are high, with no other claims about the fact that they were absolutely high during the Biden administration. And you have the Trump administration saying, look, we inherited a mess. Joe Biden inherited a pandemic, and you were willing to hold his feet to the fire about the economy. Donald Trump inherited 2% inflation and 100,000 jobs created a year, crashed that, and the prices are still just as high as they were, with companies laying off people left and right. And you're saying, well, Joe Biden left him quite a mess. Nah, welcome to reality, MAGA. This is the way the show's going to operate. And the frustrating part for me is the data's there. You put it in front of people's faces, and some of you guys are all about it. I only read the negative ones because, trust me, if you ever do this job for a living, you will realize very quickly that the negative absolutely sticks out in front of you much more than the positive does. Like, we have Kate. This constantly aggravates me. If the price of fuel is dropping, why isn't the decreased cost of transport showing up? That's a completely reasonable question to ask, and I am glad that Kate is a part of this community. There's plenty of other people having similar takes to what's going on that I absolutely respect. So it's not everybody looking at it that way. And a lot of the people who interact with this show were not willing to pretend that it was okay under Joe Biden either, which is important. But it's the people who are willing to look at this information and make excuses for their guy while not acknowledging the obvious truth presented in front of them, that we are getting fleeced. We are being taken advantage of, and without looking at it objectively, it's going to continue happening. And I think that's what's so frustrating about it. I have a bunch of messages here, and then I'm going to keep talking. I like your chart on Facebook. So how is inflation at 2.5% when every one of those food items is up like 20 to 50%? I could add insurance to the property tax thing and so many other things. Exactly. This is not an all-inclusive list. This is focused specifically on food items, and specifically non-luxury food items, because that's always the line, right? Well, you gotta pick yourself up by your bootstraps. You gotta just live a little leaner until things come out. The idea of buying bread isn't a confusing one. Bread drenched in glyphosate, by the way. Thanks a lot, Maha. That's not supposed to be a high-end item. That's not one of those luxury items that so many people are talking about. And that is barely where this begins, to be frank. Anna says, wasn't there some rampant fowl disease that came through and wiped out a lot of eggs and chickens in business that should be considered in these numbers, which Mike also highlights as well? Here's the thing, guys. They continuously used the avian flu, even in 2024. They were talking about the avian flu for why they had to keep their prices 36% as high. I am not saying that it doesn't impact your prices a little bit, but eventually that would have to go away. It's a game that they are playing based in reality. COVID happened. There were supply chain issues that came about as a result of COVID. There were extra costs that came about as a result of COVID. And I realize a lot of people listening have not listened forever. So I think it's important for me to say this is a very hard balancing act, because I keep forgetting some of you guys can repeat my sayings before I finish my sentence, and some of you guys don't completely understand where I'm coming from all the time because you haven't heard me say it yet. If The profits remained the same. You would see no complaints out of me. If there were 30% price increases, or cost increases that went on the back end, and you saw profits remain relatively the same, you would not hear a peep out of me. The first hour of radio I ever did back when I was in Pittsburgh, and I've told this story to the locals before, so apologize if you're hearing me tell it again. The first hour of radio I ever did was I had come across a bill at the end of 2021. At the end of 2021, highlighting a bill proposed by Bernie Sanders. So, of course, it didn't even make it to a vote because it was about holding 30 of the highest grossing corporations to account. And it showed you across the tech sector, across the agriculture sector, across the oil and gas sector, pick an industry, across the grocery store sector, the retail sector. It would have your Amazons, your Exxons, your Walmarts, your McDonald's. Pick your poison. 30 different companies, and he would show you the profits, not the total revenue, the profits in billions of dollars generated between 2014 and 2019. He counted out 2020 because everybody's numbers were crazy that year, because that was when all the lockdowns happened. And then he showed you what took place in 2021. My first show ever was February 6, 2022, in Pittsburgh. I came out here in September of the same year. So that bill had been out for 3 or 4 months, and it showed you the profit numbers. I wish I had thought that I was going to come here. I would have looked the bill up so I could give you the specifics. It would show you several $billion increases, sometimes $10 billion increases for 30 companies. And what Sanders' bill proposed was a windfall tax on the excess profits. So to put that in layman's terms for people that might not be as math savvy, let's say from 2014 to 2019, you averaged $1.4 billion in profits a year as a corporation. Then in 2021, all of a sudden you got $6 billion in profits that year, brought about by nothing other than increasing your prices based on the guise of COVID, but actually in the name of padding your bottom line. What his bill proposed was taxing the excess profits. So not the 1.4 billion. If that was your average, that still got taxed at the regular amount. But from 1.4 billion and $1 to 6 billion, those numbers were taxed at 95%. And then take that wealth and distribute it back into the working class's pockets in the form of a rebate to help these people push through the pandemic. And it never even got brought up for a vote. And that was when Democrats controlled the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Welcome to the birth of outside the box that day. It never got brought up when we were told that Donald Trump was the reason why 60% of people couldn't afford a spare set of tires. And Donald Trump was the reason why so many of us were drowning in medical and student loan debt. And Donald Trump and Donald Trump and Donald Trump. And then when we gave Democrats a trifecta, they couldn't even bring that bill up for a vote that highlighted the greed, that highlighted the gouging, that highlighted what was taking place. And the worst part is that you could take that segment that I was doing in 2022 and do it today, because the prices have not come down from the time that I was doing that segment. And the crazy part is because, again, Democrats had the trifecta. So you couldn't embrace a progressive's attitude then, because that would highlight how much Democrats and Republicans make up two sides of the same coin. Do you know what the Democrat talking point was in February of 22? Because right now they'll condemn the oligarchy. Right now they'll talk about affordability. Right now they'll talk about the cost of living. You know what this was boiled down to in February of 2022? Conspiracy theories, the crackpot ramblings of a bunch of people that don't understand how the economy works. And we are now seeing that the prices never came down from that reality, that we had people in Congress that wanted to address it, and that it was shot down when Democrats controlled the entire thing. And you wonder why there is a clamoring for an end of the status quo. People know that the Trump administration intends to give all your money to Elon Musk and do nothing else. They have made it clear MAGA is the pro-billionaire party until further evidence is resulted, because the only thing that happened is Donald Trump cut their taxes. They all laid a bunch of people off, and they are continuing to jack their prices up under the guise of tariffs. Tariffs that some of which were never implemented, some of which were not implemented at the pace that people expected, and some of which will be rolled back shortly as a result of the Supreme Court's ruling. And yet you're not going to see the bleeping prices come down. Will MAGA call it out? No, they will not. They are a cult. Will liberals call it out? Absolutely. Will they call it out when they eventually take the reins again and their party doesn't do anything to address it? Probably not, because they're a cult. We need to be able to call this stuff out all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, 100% of the time. Be willing to call this stuff out. And that's when you see the people in my comments trying to defend their dad president, because it can't be his fault. At least Kamala's not president. Otherwise, the same things would be happening. Shut up. You're in a cult. We need you guys to break free of that cult and start to acknowledge what's actually happening in America here, not just when it's happening under a Democrat. By the way, as Corby points out, the price of gas is down, but did you notice the 20-cent increase the day after the State of the Union? It's funny how that works. Kristen says, puts on tinfoil hat about inflation. We know that companies raise their prices because they could. What if there were a deliberate effort to raise prices during Biden's term to help usher in a pro-industry, pro-corporation, anti-regulation administration? You know what's funny, Kristen, is I live in that tinfoil hat world, and I've always had that theory for if a progressive actually won the presidency. With the wealth in the stock market is what I always use as an example, so consolidated into the hands of 200 billionaires that it won't be Bernie because he's 1,000 years old, but if a Sanders style candidate actually won the presidency one year, all of those billionaires would pull their money out of the stock market and say, see, looks like progressive politics don't work. Meanwhile, it's because we've allowed our economy to be manipulated by like 13 people. And people are aware of that, but they're only willing to be aware of it when the other guy's in charge. When their guy's in charge, it's just that we haven't given it enough time to unfold yet. We got a call. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Morning, Ben.
Yeah, what's up there?
Remember the laziness of the news media when Walmart, I think it was Walmart, came out with the affordability from the previous year to this year about the Thanksgiving average price of a meal, and they changed the number of items, and they changed name brand to generic brand.
Oh, for sure.
Most of the news media didn't do any research on their own, where they could just go to a grocery store and make up their own list and see how it compared. But they took all of the hook, line, and sinker right from Walmart as honest God truth, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I've also used as an example, Larry, and I appreciate you teeing me up there. When Trump cut their taxes in 2017, they gave everybody $1,000 bonus that worked for them. They said, we're only doing this because Trump cut your taxes. Enter Nancy Pelosi saying this is just crumbs and the billionaires are going to get 90% of these benefits. And Republicans use that soundbite saying liberals don't understand how hard it is to make it in America. Flash forward to the big, beautiful bill. Trump cuts billionaire taxes again, and I got people calling me, telling me I made an extra $700 in the tax season this year. Yeah, great. And we're not going to be able to afford any programs, and our healthcare costs, which we'll be talking about later, might be shooting up to $31,000 if you are part of a family. But more on that later. I'm going to hit a couple more of these texts before we go to break. Jerry says coffee is up in a large part because of the Trump's tariffs. All coffee is imported. You're absolutely right, Jerry. But just to be clear, again, I don't know if you're on Facebook. I will copy paste the picture of this chart and I will send it to you in the text line. Coffee's prices skyrocketed from the beginning of from January 22 until July of 2022. They flatlined there from July of 22 until January of 25, and then straight through the roof again because of the tariffs that you're talking about. But I'm not willing to pretend that that first jump up didn't happen, and I know you aren't either. But I'm just saying this is not an only Donald Trump problem. Even if you got rid of the tariff bump, coffee would still be 30% higher than it is today. It's just because of Trump's tariffs, coffee is 50% higher than it was pre-inflation. And that's the only difference. Trump is absolutely making the problem worse, but it was bad before he got there. And that is what needs to be focused on by Democrats if they expect to be taken seriously by people. That's a big if. Larry says the news says we are a service-based economy. I say we are a scalping-based economy based on the way that's what I do on the stock market. I scalp, which, yeah, you're always upfront about the way that it works, man. I mean, the system is broken, and like I'm invested in my own ways as well. I hate the system the way that it works, but you also have to know, like I always say, my voice is loud because I put myself in a position to be debt free and be able to do a job that doesn't necessarily pay as much as a lot of other jobs and get these opinions out there. Not as easy to do from the gutter. So if you're in a position to be able to take part in these broken systems, you absolutely have to. It's a matter of not looking down your nose, which you do not do, Larry. It's a matter of not looking down your nose and pretending that because you're in a position to take part in these broken systems, that you are somehow better or you somehow worked harder than the people that are clearly being excluded by these systems, whether that's investing in the stock market, whether that's being able to afford healthcare, whether that's being able to get in a home and take part in this. I'm seeing almost 100% return on investment increase in return on investment on a property that I bought less than a decade ago. Like, being able to acknowledge, like, yeah, I'm obviously not going to reduce the price of my home when I need to be able to still maintain a home as well, but also saying, yeah, a person who's not in this system is absolutely excluded from it at this point. Being able to juxtapose both of those realities is what fixing this system is all about. Hell, to make it on more of a small scale, in my industry, there's not a lot of women that do talk radio. The fact that Haley Tenpass, who's on after me, does what she does is a hell of a benefit that we have here at WHBY. And it's why when I'm not here, yes, I let Jason fill in, but I also let Anna fill in. It's why I brought Aaron the intern into the program a couple years ago. I recognize that I want to be able to do this job, and I'm not going to give up my position, but I can use the position I'm in to try and facilitate the kind of change that I would like to see happen. It's that little micro principle spread out over the entire economy that we need to start seeing happen. And there are people, specifically in the progressive flank, that are trying to make that happen, but you got to push through the MAGA and blue MAGA duopoly in order to get there. And they'd rather tell you, oh, did you see Zoran Mamdani paid people $30 an hour to shovel snow? What a socialist. Yes, he's using tax dollars to improve the life of the people in the community that he represents, both in terms of paying them and as well as the entire community that gets the benefit of having a massive snowstorm shoveled in less than 24 hours and have society up and rolling again. It's almost like it's a win-win being portrayed as an absolute L by Republicans. Waka waka, welcome to Outside the Box on a Friday. Just like yesterday, I've been talking for almost 30 minutes, but I do want to keep this conversation rolling. If you have any thoughts about this, I welcome those. 920-281-11, 920-281-1150, and I would love to hear what you guys think about this. The numbers are laid out there in no uncertain terms. If you haven't seen them, follow me on any social pages at Ben Cominos. It's just Dominoes with a C. Tell me I'm wrong in what I'm looking at. We'll be back on the other side of the break. You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY and Political Voices Network. Oh, hey, I'm already back. How about that? This economy is much more than a Republican or Democratic issue. It goes so much further than that. And until they're willing to talk about it that way, it's going to be very difficult to trust anybody that's talking to you about this. If somebody running for office right now is willing to condemn Trump's tariffs, which based on a price issue, again, I can't comment, and it looks like we'll never know from a bringing manufacturing back to America perspective, although I will say a lot more manufacturing jobs were being created under Joe Biden than are being created right now. but from an actual cost of living crisis, they absolutely inflated the price. Turns out the people saying that tariffs are a tax on the American consumer were actually right. I believe I saw a report that said 90% of the costs at this point have been borne out by the American consumer. And then when that report came out, the government worked to silence it because our dear leader decided that it was probably best that we didn't get to see that kind of information. It is the job of mainstream media to convince you that the views of 10% of people are actually that of 90% of people. I am not the only one that does a show like this. Like, I do not hold myself on a pedestal. I think I'm one of the only ones in talk radio that does a show like this. But in terms of shows available online, I'm not the only one that understands that both parties are leading us down a path that is just unsustainable. Democrats is more sustainable than the one that Republicans are on, but neither one is sustainable. It's just, would you rather gradually spiral into just an unlivable situation, or would you rather it just hit like a ton of bricks all at once? And it seems like right now we're voting for the ton of bricks all at once. Wouldn't it be better if Elon Musk had all the money kind of perspective of politics today, which is unfortunate. There is a company, Block. I'm not even sure what they do, honestly. They laid off 40% of their workforce, and then as a result, they got a 20% bump in their stock price. And I hate to tell it to you, but like they say in football, it's a copycat league. It's a copycat league. And once other companies that are on the same level as Block start to see that kind of stuff happening, we already saw Amazon lay people off. We saw Nike lay people off. We saw Tesla lay people off. All these people getting these massive tax cuts are laying off 5 figures worth of people from their workforces, despite the fact that they're taking home hundreds of billions of dollars as CEOs of these companies. I guess it is better that they have it. They probably know what to do better with the money than, 100,000 people would, I'm sure. And you don't see these things turning around. Again, not unique to Trump, just expedited under Trump. What's unique to Trump is the fact that the pennies that Democrats let the working class have, those get pulled away from us. I'm going to play a clip right now, and trigger warning, it's not an easy clip to listen to. There's a chance some of you guys saw it. It's probably one of the more viewed videos from yesterday, if I have to guess. It is a woman calling C-SPAN to talk about her experience living with hunger in America. This woman is not playing the system, and you'll understand how I know that in a second once you hear what she has to say. And these are the moments that get me angry, because you see what food companies are doing, clearly gouging us. It's unavoidable. Happened under Biden, happening now. There is a population of people that are willing to believe, not going to call them dumb because I know I get told on when I call people names. There are people gullible enough to believe that the reason they are paying more for food is because people are on welfare programs. Some of them are even Mexican. There are people on welfare programs, and as a result, it's the poor people holding the middle class down, which is always how the wealthiest people always end up trying to position these kind of things. I'm going to play this woman for you here, and you tell me if our costs have been increased since 2022 because of this woman, or because the Walton family thinks you're too dumb to realize that they are gouging you. What do you guys think?
I had my annual physical yesterday. I'm 65 years old. I'm legally blind. I'm on disability. I went to my doc and I lost 28 pounds in the last year. I did not need to lose 28 pounds. I did not try to lose 28 pounds. I lost the 28 pounds because I cannot afford to eat anymore. Under Biden, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Under Biden, I was able to put $100 a month away for food, along with my SNAP, and I did okay. I could get fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, and meat. It is just me. But now, with grocery prices so high, propane, electricity out of this world, I now only allow myself $65 a month for food.
Sharon, are you on SNAP benefits?
Let me tell you, under Joe Biden, I received $80 a month for SNAP. That was taken away from me under Donald Trump. He took it away. He gave me $24 a month. I did receive that for a couple of months. Then he took it down to $12.50 a month. I said, screw you. So I'm not doing that no more. So no, I get $65 a month, Mimi. And for them people out there, all these Republicans that are doing so flipping well right now, I have 3 potatoes. I have a half a tomato. I have 3 bananas, 1 apple, 1 can of soup, a half a loaf of bread, 1 egg, and 1 can of green beans. I do not get paid until the 3rd. I am disability blind. I cannot drive a car. I'm 15 miles out of town, so I am not able to just trot my butt down to the food shelf. I used to volunteer at the food shelf. I can't even do that anymore. I don't understand. I'd like somebody to explain to me, why is it always the poor people that are helping the poor people? I don't understand. But what I want to say, Mimi, is that it's really close to coming. Like that man said, the end is coming near, and it can't be any more true for me.
Now, some of you guys may be very frustrated by that audio you heard, but allow me to provide you a counterpoint. How could Elon Musk buy a 5th yacht if we didn't take the $80 a month of SNAP benefits that blind woman was receiving for groceries so she could buy a handful of fruits and vegetables and a couple pieces of meat? How selfish are you that you would take Elon's 5th yacht away from him? Waka waka, MAGA. This is what trickle-down economics does, and this is the game that is being played on you. And unfortunately, some of you are falling for it over and over and over and over again. And it's about time that you maybe pull your heads out of your you-know-whats and start understand what's actually going on here. And I think the most frustrating part, why I find myself getting angry even doing this segment right now, and a mixture of sad, to be perfectly frank, is because I don't know where to turn with this. Because I do know that Democrats were willing to, until July of 2024, try and convince us that the 33% increase in our groceries was in our heads. And now they're willing to say it, but I don't hear them talking about the necessity to tax these rich bastards into oblivion and make sure that this woman has access to the food to freaking eat. This blind woman who works at food pantries, who might be Mexican, MAGA, I don't care, wants the capacity to eat. And we can't seem to find a way to make this work because we have to cut taxes for billionaires for a 4th time in my life, while watching the middle class continue to constrict. As Larry points out in my text line, the 2 most popular presidents were Eisenhower and Kennedy. The 2 least popular presidents are Biden or Trump. What were we doing in the 60s? Taxing billionaires between 70 and 91%. What are we doing between 2016 and today? Getting damn Mexicans. Jerry asks, out of curiosity, was the woman who called C-SPAN an example of waste, fraud, or abuse? Probably all 3, Jerry, because how was she padding billionaire stock market lines or stock lines? I'm saying it wrong, so I'm ticked right now. How is she padding the bottom line? There we go. So it seems like waste, I guess, because if Jeff Bezos, if Bill Gates doesn't get infinity more dollars off of her, seems like a waste of tax dollars to me. I get, MAGA, that you are frustrated with the Democratic Party. Something trans. I get it. I get that the economy sucked under Joe Biden. Yes, he was trying to pull us out of a pandemic, and it is not apples to apples with what Donald Trump inherited. But what I do know is this. Yes, the economy sucked under Joe Biden, and your orange dad president sucks worse at it. And I'm not willing to pretend that I don't know what I'm looking at. I know what I'm looking at. And that's an orange man whose name is draped all over the Epstein files 38,000 times, distracting you with Mexicans and trans people, taking our money, taking our healthcare costs, taking our Social Security, enriching his family to the tune of $4 billion. And me saying this out loud makes you cry to my higher ups, because why is the mean man saying the stuff that's happening? Because I am beholden to the stuff that is happening. That woman does not deserve to be in this position so that Elon Musk can build rocket ships. Use your own money, 850 billionaire, to build the rocket ships. And stop looking for tax handouts, you welfare queen. The fact that I have to explain why this isn't a good way to do society should not be confusing. The fact that people should be fed, and the people paying $850 billion a year, or worth $850 billion a year, could probably be worth $450 billion and still be fine. And people talking like me are portrayed by the dude draped as radicals by the dude draped all over the Epstein files. That woman's audio clearly has me feeling a certain way today. It should probably have everybody feeling a certain way, but I realize that would require criticizing an orange man draped all over the Epstein files. Justin says the blind woman's testimony was heartbreaking. I'm friends with a legally blind woman who's on disability. She gets paid, and after bills, she's broke this week. Fortunately, she's always good on food, but it sure makes us want to help. The segment suggestion on help would be great. I will work on it. I will figure that out for sure. Anna says people like okay, you know what? I got 30 seconds, so I got a couple people piling up here. I'll tell you what, we'll keep this conversation rolling on the other side, but I do have to keep it moving here because we are pressed up against a hard out. We will be back. I'll get the text messages in that are actually relevant to what I'm talking about, and we will continue this conversation then. You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY and Political Voices Network. If you're just joining us, we basically took the entire first hour highlighting just how much the cost of groceries have shot up since from 2020 until today, with the first massive jump all essentially happening in unison in 2022, leveling off regardless of the level of inflation at that point, even as inflation went up to 9.1 and then coming back down to 2.1 in the middle of 2023. Prices leveled off there. Some prices have only continued to skyrocket since the Trump administration has started up, with the implementation of tariffs and lack of interest actually holding billionaires to account. Some of you guys even like defending the ones that salute Nazis. And then highlighting the fact that there are even people out there with the one woman calling into C-SPAN, a blind woman saying under the Biden years, it was not pretty, but she was able to put away about $100 a month. She had access to SNAP benefits. She had the capacity to do these things. But what were we supposed to do about making sure Elon Musk could buy Greenland all by himself? So we cut her SNAP benefits in the name of catching damn Mexicans and gave all the money to Elon. So now he can buy Greenland. She has now lost 28 pounds over the course of 12 months. The system worked. Thankfully, there's plenty of other examples of the success of Donald Trump that I haven't been able to get into during the first hour that I'm looking forward to jumping into with you guys here over the last hour, because he's doing a very good job as president, and I think it's important for me to highlight these things. I also have to learn, as a result of this show also being videoed, that I should probably stop pounding the desk when I get angry, because the camera is on the desk. So if you are watching on YouTube and there was a little bit of shaky cam footage, like you're watching the radio version of Cloverfield or something, that's my bad. I'm still learning how to do the right things here sometimes. And, you know, as a Mediterranean, sometimes my emotions can get the best of me. It's kind of it's one of my most endearing traits, people tell me. I don't know. Oh, man. Oh, and I do apologize to the people that listen. I messed something up yesterday. If you were looking for the video of this show on YouTube, it goes up at 1 p.m., but I messed something up. It ended up not going live until 8:30 yesterday, and it wasn't on the other people that I work with. That was absolutely my mistake. It will be up at 1 today. I try and keep it consistent so you guys know when to catch the live stream or the rebroadcast stream of the show. And then, of course, it's available at any other time. Just search my name in Political Voices Network. But definitely messed that one up yesterday. Like I said, work in progress. We're getting there. And shout out to the texter that said I should host a town hall in the Fox Valley. I actually don't hate that idea. It's probably going to take some coordination, though. But I definitely could get behind it for sure. Now, you guys tell me I beat up on Trump too much. So I do want to highlight some of the good things that he's doing. The Trump administration has recognized that the Affordable Care Act has allowed subsidies for corporations to shoot through the roof under the noses of liberals and conservatives, not progressives, of course. We've been highlighting this for a long time. And now that they have been rolled back, people are seeing healthcare premiums completely dwarf any benefits that might be coming from the big, beautiful bill, ultimately resulting in a net negative while costs continue to go up. I realize all this sounds like bad stuff, but don't worry, because Trump's got our back. He's actually trying to circumvent Congress because those darn liberals are just getting in his way at this point. So he's going to make some changes to the ACA without congressional approval. And some of them are really beneficial. Like one change that he has proposed would raise the annual deductible for one person from around to over $15,000, and for a family to over $31,000 a year. So an individual would have to pay $15,000. A family would have to pay $31,000 before their health care would even kick in. So, like, you see, he's got our backs. Like, who can't afford an extra $31,000 to pay for their health care? I mean, yeah, there are very workable examples of Medicare for all taking place, or at least a public option taking place in literally every other industrialized nation. And in literally every other industrialized nation, they pay 2 to 5 times less per capita than we do for healthcare. And also in every other industrialized nation other than Ukraine, they have an average life expectancy of between 2 and 4 years longer than the average American. And from what I'm being told, there are extenuating circumstances in Ukraine that are adding to that decreased life expectancy that have nothing to do with their healthcare system. But it's not like we have those kind of examples thrust in our face every day. So I think Donald Trump's on to something here by making someone like me have to pay $15,000 had I worked for myself, or if I had a family, having me pay $31,000 a year extra into healthcare to make sure that these ghouls are able to buy more yachts. I'm glad he's finally got our back, unlike those dastardly Democrats who, don't get me wrong, we're funneling tax dollars into an Obamacare system that without a public option absolutely was not beneficial for the American people, but was absolutely more beneficial, whatever this pile of horse crap is. It's almost like one party defends a status quo that is absolutely unacceptable, and another party just does everything they can to drag us at a screaming pace away from that status quo that was already unacceptable, while a third of the country pretends that things are getting better because we're a mighty white nation. And, some of us just kind of go crazy because we have to talk about it every single day. I will say the fact that Donald Trump has made DEI illegal is probably my favorite thing that he did, because now when anybody tries to message me off the air and is like, why aren't you talking about Turning Point USA trying to get on Lawrence University campus? And I can just say, I'm pretty sure DEI is illegal. So if you want a diverse set of opinions that are included in a fair and equitable way on college campuses, I'm right there with you. But unfortunately, DEI is illegal. So it seems as though they would have to earn a spot through merit. Right, MAGA? Can't just let them on without proving their worth. They gotta earn it there through merit. What, you think I want a black pilot? If you're new to this show, there's so many inside jokes that just make me sound like a crazy person, and I apologize for that. You're just going to have to keep up. I have no issues with black pilots. This is my shot at people that think DEI is what's holding this country back and not rampant wealth inequality that's held out there right now. But so that's not a made-up story, by the way, to bring this conversation full circle. That is currently what the agenda is right now for healthcare. I've looked into Trump Care. I've been advertising this for weeks now, and for the life of me, guys, I can't differentiate what the difference is between Trump Care and what the privatized healthcare systems, like the Good RX, is. Not an ad, not at all an ad, just the best example that I have. What the difference is between what he's proposing there and what's being proposed there. I think it's my obligatory job to remind you guys of this every so often. Under the Biden administration, there was an effort to reduce the price of all drugs for all individuals. But then Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, along with every single Republican in the House and Senate, voted against reducing the price of those drugs. And so therefore, we ended up with a watered-down version that reduced the price of 10 drugs for the welfare generation, otherwise known as the people over the age of 65, by 2026. Unfortunately, that didn't end up coming to fruition because the Trump administration decided to kill even that piece of legislation, because how does reducing the price of drugs for people over the age of 65 pad Jeff Bezos's pockets? It doesn't. So why would we do it? So even that isn't happening. Now he proposes Trump RX, which I believe takes about 43 drugs. And what's funny is it doesn't even advertise that there are generic versions of the drugs that are on Trump RX for even cheaper than what the discounted price through this thing are. And more importantly, almost all of those discounts are available through other privatized entities already. So it's just something for him to put his name on, something to hope to derive some kind of headlines out of, and something that I was actually excited. I'm like, maybe he's actually going to accidentally trip and fall backwards into benefiting the American public. And here we are. Nope, never mind. That's on me for assuming that something beneficial would come out of this administration, other than a terrifying network of masked vigilantes harassing Mexicans. But who knows? We still got 3 more years. Maybe something good will come out of it. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Hey, Ben, how are you going?
I'm all right. About yourself?
I'm doing okay. Hey, I don't know if you touched on this or not, but that whole tariff refund thing, 175 billion, I think is the number, right? Now, am I correct on what I heard, that they're going to give it back to the corporations instead of the people that had to pay the inflated prices?
Yeah, I'm kind of in speculation mode right there with you on it. I think if they have the audacity to do that, they have to know, if he intends to do that, it will be after November 2026, because I think the crap storm that would stem from that would be insurmountable from an electoral standpoint. I don't know if that's fear mongering or if that's actually what's in store. To be frank, I wouldn't be surprised if nobody sees that money. But if you ask me, metaphorical gun to my head, I would say the corporations see it before the individuals see it. But that's just because I've been studying this stuff for far too long. But that's probably the best we can do right now.
Okay. Like I said, I'm just going off of, bull crap that you hear. Right?
Yeah, oh, for sure. But it doesn't look promising for sure. But the reason people trust this show is because I don't jump the gun, and I never want to report on something that looks like maybe it's just talking points. But we watched Obama do it in right after the recession. I wouldn't put it past these guys to do it and spin it as beneficial in some way. So, we'll see what happens.
And as far as the whole healthcare thing, I'm on Marketplace or Obamacare or whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
And it barely covers anything already.
Right.
It doesn't touch. Let's face it, in politicians' own ideas, because they get all the benefits, right? But none of that insurance covers vision, hearing, or dental.
For sure.
And so you're on your own for all of that already. And so that's almost ridiculous too, because you talk to any kind of healthcare person and they say, well, if your oral health goes to crap, your general health goes to crap.
Right.
Well, good luck going to see a dentist unless you got a wallet full of cash.
1,000%. I'm right there with you, man. All that stuff is obscenely expensive. And I'll let you go there, but I think the points that you're making are spot on. Obamacare never went far enough to address these issues. And moreover, and see, this is where the duopoly comes from, right? Obama had a 60-seat majority in the House. He had a 59 Democratic senators, 59 Democrats in the Senate. There we go. Must be Friday. 59 Democrats in the Senate at the same time. And even with those kind of majorities trying to get Obamacare across, there were the good, level-headed, bipartisan Democrats that were willing to join their conservative allies to show that they were willing to work across the aisle to completely kneecap Obamacare before it could ever got off the ground. As you oftentimes remember me, when I highlight Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin killing, along with every single Republican in the House and Senate, voting against reducing the price of drugs during the Biden years, during the Obama years, every single Republican in the House and Senate, plus Joe Lieberman, voted against a public option funded by the government. In other words, we could have had Obamacare with also a public option. And for those of you that don't understand the difference, what the public option would have allowed for is a version of generic drugs to be owned by the government for every drug created with government subsidy. Fun fact, since 2010, every single drug created has been created with government subsidy. Since the turn of the millennium, 94% of drugs created have been created with the help of government subsidy. So this would have almost included every single drug created since I was 12 years old. Thankfully, Joe Lieberman and the Republican Party decided that a public option sounded too much like socialism, and they ended up killing that prospect in the name of making sure that healthcare companies could continue to make all the profits. Because think about it. If Obamacare still would have existed, we're not getting rid of private insurance, right? But there would have been a government-run option selling generic drugs at cost. So if you were broke, you could show up and buy the generic drugs. And if you were a wealthy person, you could buy the fancy ones. Now, sorry for the repeat story here, broke my collarbone on January 1st, 2009, the first and only time I ever went skiing. Never going again. Stupid sport. When I broke my collarbone, for those of you that don't know this, actually, if you watch the video, you'll see me randomly holding my collarbone at times. I broke it almost 20 years ago. You know what I mean? And I randomly feel pains in it to this day. When the first prescription that I got, you don't get a cast. There's no cast for the broken collarbone. You're put in a sling, and the doctor's like, try to move as little as possible. The first prescription they gave me, given the health insurance that I had, was full-blown, like, Vicodin. And it hit like a ton of bricks. And like, you didn't know what way was up. You didn't know your collarbone was broken. You're like, yeah, this is fine. I'm cool with this, because I had 2 more weeks of Christmas break before I had to go back. All my friends would go back 2 or 3 days after the first. So I'd have like a week and a half by myself, just sit there gaming, completely on cloud nine, not knowing what way was up. Then after those ran out, I got the generic version of Vicodin. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh God, I can still kind of feel the pain. I was like, this really doesn't work as well. Then the generic Vicodin would wear off. I'd be like, oh no, this works super well. It just doesn't work as well as the brand name Vicodin does. But it's definitely better than not having anything. Were we to have a public option, you could have the wealthy people getting full-blown Vicodin. You could have the people that couldn't afford that at least having access to generic Vicodin. Instead, we voted for a system where generic or full or store name Vicodin is expensive as hell, and there's a lot of people are just like, you know what? I don't think I need it. I'm just going to tough it out, and it's doable, but that absolutely sucks and probably shouldn't be happening in the wealthiest nation in the country. I say all of that to say, Barack Obama got Obamacare across the finish line with a vote of 219 to 217, with a borderline Democratic supermajority in the House. And the only reason they were able to get to that 219 number was after making concession after concession after concession to the quote-unquote moderates, and the Republicans still refer to it as socialism to this day. And so you have a system that over the course of 16 years was absolutely kneecapped from its inception, and then resulted in a funneling of our tax dollars into a system that you don't recognize that it's happening because it doesn't come directly out of your wallet. And year over year, you're watching more and more of our tax dollars get funneled into the healthcare system because there was no part of the legislation that limited how that was going to work, that was going to dictate how our tax dollars went into Obamacare. Republicans, despite the fact that every single Republican in the House and Senate votes against any measure to actually make healthcare more affordable, have absolutely no gripes about highlighting the fact that the version of Obamacare that they themselves kneecapped in the case of the Republicans that have been there since 2010 absolutely has been a boon for the healthcare companies while leaving the average Americans high and dry. And then the Trump administration shows up and says, I'm just going to have you pay $31,000 a year before your healthcare can kick into effect, and pretend like that is some kind of victory, because we know the last thing we would want to do is use government legislation to hold pharmaceutical companies to the same standard that every other industrialized nation has seemed to figure out a way to do. But, you know, that's socialism. You can't do that, can you? This administration sucks. I don't know how else I can highlight this for you guys outside of the way that I've done, and I don't want to be repetitive. I'm just searching to see if anybody has any comments here that are actually relevant to the conversation today. It doesn't seem like yet. If that's the case, anybody has any thoughts, welcome the calls, welcome the text, 920-281-1150, 920-281-1150. Want to dabble back in the world of children here, if you will. You know, there's a lot of pressure right now in my generation to have kids. I don't have children. My 2-year younger brother doesn't have children. Some of my best friends don't. Others do. It's not a one size fits all solution here. But I'd argue, given the fact that I'm, you know, unfortunately in my late 30s at this point, I think I can't swing 38 as mid 30s. I don't think I should probably have more people in my life that are having kids that are objectively not doing it. And for the record, not to rub it in, but I have a pretty successful group of friends by and large. A lot of the people that I grew up with turned out pretty okay in the economic world. There's a lot that goes into what defining okay means. More Perfect Union ran a study about what it costs in a 2-child house in order to do childcare to raise those children. And let's just say that the numbers don't quite equate to what they used to in the 90s when I was being raised. And it goes a little bit beyond what the cost of inflation is doing to the prospect of raising children. I'm going to jump into that with you guys on the other side of the break. So stay where you are. Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY and Political Voices Network. DSL's asking, do you think there's party infighting over kickbacks that affect votes, like athletes in contract negotiations and holdouts? Hey, Big Pharma, you're giving this person a $500,000 campaign donation, but I'm only getting $10K. You better increase my salary. See, I think it's a matter of conflicting interests. Like, I think, like, the oil lobby picks one party and the renewable energy party lobby picks a different party. And then it's just a matter of, it's your job as politicians to figure out how to spin my talking points in a way that you can win elections and then ultimately push my narrative forward. But I also wouldn't be surprised if, like, there were certain, because I remember when the NRA was like the lobby du jour of who everybody hated at the moment. There was like a stat that like 7 conservatives and 1 Democrat received $1 million a year from those lobbies. And then like everybody else was in the hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands or even just regular thousands, depending on their reach. And I'm willing to bet there's probably like life goals, right? It's like, boy, I hope one day I get to be one of those $1 million lobby recipients. But that means I'm probably going to have to say some really wild crap about the stuff that happens. I'll tell you what, I'll say Sandy Hook was an inside job or whatever the hell Alex Jones's stance was on the matter at the time. But I wouldn't be surprised if that kind of stuff happens or if they mock one another. And again, you're keeping up with the Joneses. I think one of my greatest strengths about not being on social media is that I don't have the keeping up with the Joneses trait, because like I didn't in my 20s like compare myself to a bunch of people also in their 20s born into very different lifestyles than me. But once you're in a clique, once you're in a group, like when you're athletes and like let's use the NBA because there's max contracts in the NBA. So like I think you can max out at like 57 million or something like that, maybe 67 million. I don't know. I don't actually know the number. Don't bother correcting me. It's not important. If you're maxing out on a contract, meanwhile there's somebody else making $17 million a year and someone else is making 57 million, well, you start to get angry because 57 million lends itself to a very different lifestyle than 17 million. And I have to believe, to kind of use your sports analogy there, DSL, that a similar kind of scenario happens in politics. Even just the base pay of like the $173,000 or whatever it is, like the idea that you are taking dollars from other people to put the American population in a worse position than the one it's in, while already having access to like $173,000 a year, I feel like to a lot of people has to be infuriating. Although I also believe that a lot of those people that are angry at it would also engage in it if they were given the opportunity to do so. It's like the scene in Dodgeball when Ben Stiller's like, have you ever seen what $100,000 looks like at one time? And then he opens up the briefcase and it's just like the one stack of hundreds, and it's incredibly unimpressive when you see it in a briefcase. And it's a very comical scene, but I think like that moment kind of highlights what happens to people once they are in politics. And it's like anything else. It's when you get into the police force, when you join the armed forces, everybody does those things. I would like to believe everybody does those things with the intentions of doing the right things. Then you see the way the system's exploited. You see the way you're a cog in a machine. You see the way that you really aren't going to be able to turn the system around as one individual, not to be a downer, but I think a lot of people come to that realization. And they're like, well, if I can't change anything, then I may as well get rich on everything as I'm doing it, a la John Fetterman. And I think that's what we end up seeing play out time and time again. And politics is just a much more publicized version of that, but you can fill in the blanks. I had a very good friend's father who was in the police force back in my hometown, and he busted some rich jerk's kid driving like an idiot. And the rich jerk's kid dad, of course, calls the police force because there's two systems of the law in America. I don't know if you guys have been following the Epstein list at all. And he calls the police chief and he says, hey, look, this is my kid and I don't want to deal with the stuff that's coming as a result of what your officer's doing. Tell him to drop what he's doing and stop going through the process here. Chief goes to my friend's dad and he says, look, just drop it with this kid. I realize he's a punk, but the powers that be don't want to see it happen. And I don't want the headache that's going to fall on my head if we continue to push forward. So just drop it. Friend's dad, who's 2 years away from retirement, decides that he's not going to drop it. Respect the hell out of him for that. And as a result, he was put on the worst shifts possible every day for the rest of his career. And he would always tell me, had he not been so close to retirement, he probably just would have quit. But obviously, and I don't need to tell the people listening who are law enforcement right now that you want the access to the pension and all the benefits that come with making it to a certain point. And by holding true to his values and trying to buck the system, it turns out the system bucks back and a whole hell of a lot harder than anything one individual is able to do. Like I said, I'm making a career speaking truth to a duopoly that is absolutely designed to fleece you. During the Blue MAGA era, and I think it has something to do with just the region of the country that I live in, there were a couple of callers who would get bent out of shape. But I will say, at least you guys weren't as big as snowflakes and didn't like try and run up the flagpole and try and end my career. Since Trump has been in office, there have been no less than 4 coordinated efforts to try and take me down. Unfortunately, when you're rated number 1 in the market, guys, it's kind of difficult, isn't it? But needless to say, and all I'm doing, like I realize some of you guys will defend your orange dad presidents until infinity, but some of you guys get so bent out of shape, not because I am holding Donald Trump to any different standard than I held Joe Biden to, but because I'm holding him to the same standard, and you're nervous that more and more people are waking up every day that the GOP is actually more criminal than the Democratic Party is, but that neither party actually is sending their best and brightest to do the job that we need them to do right now. And it's funny how trying to do a show that holds politicians in general to account is in a lot of ways the establishment's biggest fear. And I do hope that you guys keep trying. You should never give up. Try and take me down. I think you guys might get me one day. So do keep trying, please, because I'd hate to discourage you guys. But just know I'm obscenely good at what I do, so it's going to be difficult. So with that, by the way, we did get a texter. But if you're listening on YouTube, typically the last hour on Fridays can tend to go a little bit off the rails. Sometimes I get a little punch drunk. I see that finish line, and I get really excited about getting to that finish line. But I do want to say I got a text from a new texter that is absolutely killing me from a comment that I said yesterday. And I feel like I should clarify before I jump into this raising children conversation. It says, did I hear you right when you said welfare drugs, then commented only people over 65 use them? I work to have a pension and Social Security. I've earned my welfare drugs. I really want to highlight, I wasn't calling them welfare. Well, I was calling them welfare drugs, but it's tongue in cheek, because it is oftentimes the boomer generation. And if you're new to this show, you might not understand this. It's oftentimes the boomer generation, not my listeners, not the bulk of my listeners. If you've made it this far into this show, you get it. You understand my point, and you know that it's tongue in cheek, but a lot of truth is said in jest, as I oftentimes state. The boomers grew up in the FDR era that I talk about, where billionaires were taxed between 70 and 91%. Then, once they entered adulthood and were in their late 20s, early 30s, they started voting to remove those taxes because they started accruing wealth, and they kind of pulled the ladder up for future generations. Slow process. It doesn't happen overnight, but the middle class has been constricting consistently for 45 years. And anytime someone my age then highlights, hey, looks like the government was pretty heavily involved. They made stock buybacks illegal. They enforced antitrust laws. They taxed the billionaires at a reasonable rate to prevent price gouging and prevent wealth consolidation and make sure that it was distributed back to the people. And they used state tax funds in order to keep college tuition low so that you didn't go into never-ending debt for having the audacity to educate yourself. And then when you talk to boomers about having the ability to allow that for yourself, they call you a welfare queen. They tell you, pick yourself up by your bootstraps like we did. And then in reality, you guys are actually the biggest welfare generation that's out there. You just don't ever acknowledge it. And then you get mad when people highlight it because you sure as hell can't actually defend that you were on it. So I'm not actually saying that you guys are welfare queens or that you didn't work to earn what you got, but the idea that the government didn't hold your hands into adulthood and usher you into that adulthood only for you to turn around. Hell, right now, there are people in their 65 and older saying, why do I have to pay property taxes? I don't have any children in school. Right. But when you did have children in school, the people that were 65 years old were paying property taxes to make sure that your children had an appropriately funded public education. And now you're demanding that the same people that you keep pulling the ladder up from figure out a different way in order to fund their children's education because you don't want to pay in anymore. And so it's just time after time after time. Just like Joe Biden tried to lower the price of drugs for everybody in America, but every single Republican in the House and Senate, plus Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, voted to stop that. So then they passed a bill just to do it for people over the age of 65. And it's just time and time and time and time and time again. It seems like the benefits are always aimed at a particular generation that then turns around and says, stop looking for the government to solve all your problems. And it's that irony that I am highlighting when I call the boomers the welfare generation. I am a tongue-in-cheek person. As I've stated before, about 2/3 of my listening audience terrestrially are 55 and older. I'm getting younger, especially for AM radio, but it's still 2/3 people that age. You guys understand what I'm saying when I say these things. But if you are new to the point, if you're new to the show and you don't understand my inside jokes or the way I'm talking, like I don't actually think the Democrats are coming to trans your kids. It's me pretending because this is how right-wing radio fear mongers to a particular group of people, typically in the same demographic as the one I'm talking about, in order to get them to vote against their own self-interest. And I get frustrated because it seems to work more often than it doesn't, whether you're talking about black people or gay people or trans people or the Somalis or whoever it may be. Jeff says, I'm getting into politics because of all the bribery and corruption, not to stop it, but to get some for myself. Exactly. It's the same reason I got into media. I'm just waiting to get big enough until they pay me for my silence, you know? One of these days, I'm going to come out there and say, I really do think the Ukrainians deserve all of our money. And that's when you'll know, son of a gun, they got him. Jerry says, Ben, to support your point, my parents were both the first in their families to attend, and for both of them, college was free. A generation for me, later for me, it wasn't free, but it was very affordable. Exactly, and it goes down the list. And honestly, and I can't go too long on this because I still have to get to a commercial break here, but the cost of college follows the exact same path as the cost of healthcare. Laws were passed to attribute to apply federal funds to college loans, and it was done altruistically because they wanted to make sure that people born in poverty had the access to college that people not born in poverty did, so that they too could pull themselves up by those aforementioned bootstraps. But then what happened was there was no back end stop applied to the federal funds. So what colleges did was continue to increase their tuition year after year. The government would vote to increase the federal dollars go in year after year without adding a cap to how far these colleges would go. And then one day a Republican gets in office, says, why are we paying so much for these kids to go to college? Can't they pay for themselves? And then you take that subsidy away. Now nobody can go to college and everybody's working in different positions. I am not saying you have to go to college to make something of yourself. One of my family members, one of my parents didn't and absolutely sustained himself. But I'm saying that it opens a lot of doors that otherwise wouldn't be open. In my generation, had I not gone to college, you wouldn't be hearing me right now. Yet if you listen to the station that I used to work for, trash station, most of the people on the air did not graduate from college. So it's a reality facing a younger generation that a lot of people in their 60s are absolutely willing to acknowledge. But there are a much larger percentage of those same over 60 somethings that are willing to pretend that those benefits were not applied to them. So when I call you guys the welfare generation, that's who I'm aiming this at. We have to squeeze one more break in, and then I promise we'll maybe at least start the childcare conversation. Not going to be a satisfying ending to this show, but when is it ever, really? We'll be back in a little bit. You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY and Political Voices Network. By the way, John Thune said he's not going to kill the filibuster to push forward the authoritative SAVE Act anymore. So fret not. We will still be able to have undocumented immigrants voting in our election again, which was the end days, the end goal there, right? By the way, I said I was going to do the child care thing, assuming nothing big breaks over the weekend. I promise we'll do it in a much more in-depth way on Monday, because a couple of things. First of all, from an administrative standpoint, for the people like watching the videos that I do, Larry said, I looked for your red hat video yesterday and couldn't find it. I have it now. I'm going to watch it when this episode is over. First of all, love you for that. Second of all, as I mentioned, it struggled going up, and I need to work on my landing page on YouTube in general. I'm actually going to post a link to that episode on my Facebook page and Twitter. I'm going to see if I can do it on TikTok and Instagram. I'm still learning, guys. I realize I'm a millennial, but I suck at social media. So I'm going to see if it makes sense to post it there as well. So anybody who wants to see me in the red hat for the purposes of the holiday yesterday, it will be available. It is available on YouTube right now. You just have to scroll a little bit. Just search Ben Cominos Political Voices Network, and it will pop up with the rest of the videos, but not in any kind of order that makes sense, which I'm going to have to talk to people there about it. And I want to wrap the show up to kind of put a bow on the generational wealth conversation that I was just having a moment ago, because oftentimes this gets lost on me, and it's why I'm happy I have people like Cynthia on the text line to keep me honest when I forget to highlight these kind of things. But I think it is important to say this, especially seeing as we are approaching the final day of Black History Month. So I'm not allowed to talk about it for another 11 months, I'm pretty sure, the way the system works. But she says, don't get me started on the generational wealth that wasn't allowed to be passed down in Black families because of everything that was done to us. No VA benefits for Black soldiers coming back from wars, loan denials, zoning, theft, terrorism, overtaxation, redlining, but bootstraps. And You're absolutely right in that scenario. And what's crazy is, Cynthia, and that's the duopoly at hand, right? Because a lot of the federal tax dollars going into student loans was used. Democrats would say, look, black people were dealt a crap deal, almost cussed. They were dealt a crap deal, and we have to take it upon ourselves to rectify the situation. So we're going to be using federal tax dollars to make sure that people that were born into disenfranchised communities have a capacity to get in there. Of course, the Republican Party pounced at that, seeing as a lot of their voters choose not to attend college. And then they see that and they say, wait, why am I working, paying taxes? And then it's going to black people that want to go to taxes, because fundamentally the system is designed to keep poor whites angry at any minority population other than billionaires, the most vicious minority population. And it was vilified. Then the mega corporations, otherwise known as the colleges, show up and they say, oh, good, now that you have the guise of trying to upend racism, we're going to jack our fees up for everybody. And as those numbers continue to get higher and higher, we will have that base of angry Americans who are mad at the idea of federal dollars going to this entirely. And it's all stemming from a fact of what Cynthia is talking about with redlining, with terrorism, with taxation. Hell, housing markets, as soon as a black person moves into a white neighborhood, everybody's housing value goes down. Nothing else changed other than a black person lives there and everybody's house goes down. So that not only discourages integration, but it says that black people are never allowed to have access to the same kind of wealth that white people are. But don't say that, because that means you're DEI and blah, 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 blah. You're exactly right, Cynthia, and I apologize for not including that in the first iteration of what I was saying there. Justin says, do I have any plans to be on Blue Sky? I technically am, and I should probably do a better job of highlighting that, but I really don't use it that much. Ernie says Cynthia's a straight shooter and he's a fan. I hope you heard that part, Cynthia. With that, guys, you know what I said? I was going to leave you guys on a happy note, but how about that? That feels like the perfect moment to end. Check me out on the WHBY app. Show goes up 15 minutes after I wrap up. Check me out on YouTube. That happens at 1 p.m. And check me out on Monday. We'll get into the biggest stories. Haley's up next with Rob. Stay tuned. Outside the Box, WHBY, Political Voices.